What's up, Doc? Welcome to the Docs Get Money podcast. Are you a badass doctor killing it professionally and has bigger dreams than just clocking in and out of the hospital? Do you want to leave behind a legacy that is as lit as an HBCU homecoming? Want to know how other doctors are getting to the big bag? That's right, making 5, 6, and 7 figures without putting on the white coat? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Kimberly, but you can call me Kim or KB. I went from being a burnt out and overwhelmed emergency physician to the founder and CEO of 2 6-figure non-clinical companies and beating burnout along the way. I'm also your business coach, here to help you make money moves to change the world. This podcast isn't just about making money, though. It's about leveling up your life, mindset, and bank account so you can build an empire that's as iconic as Beyonce. You ready? Let's get into it. If you're sitting on a mountain of expertise and wondering if it's possible to replace your clinical income while practicing full-time, I've got news for you. It's not just possible, it can happen in 90 days or less. But only if you create your FIRE offer, your express lane to fast income and a lifestyle that allows you to retire early, all while keeping your day job. Tailored for doctors ready to change lives outside of the exam room, you go from concept to cash in under 90 days as a consultant, coach, or midterm rental business. Think it's a stretch with your schedule? Think again. With the FIRE Offer Combustion Kit, you'll craft your expertise and story into an offer that's too hot to touch and sell it to make your first 4 or 5 figures. Ready to change lives and make bank fast? DM the word BURN to me, Dr. Kimberly, at Dr. Kimberly B on Instagram, and let's start a fire. What's up, Doc? Welcome back to the Docs Get Money podcast. I have yet another interview episode for you today. This is someone who I met Temi like 2 years ago, a year or so-ish ago. It feels like we've known each other so much longer because we've got so much in common. Of course, she's a coach. We're both emergency medicine physicians. We are both Pisces and just have so many different things in common. So it's been long past due for me to have Dr. Temi Ajao on the podcast. But Temi, I've alluded to you just a little bit, and I've, of course, given the introduction beforehand. But we'd love to know in your own words, please tell us who Dr. Temi Ajao is and what do you do?
All right. Well, Kim, first, thank you for having me on the podcast. Like, this is so amazing. I love the name, like Docs Get Money podcast. You know, I'm a money coach. So that's what I love. I love talking about money. I love everything money. So I'm like, oh, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. But yeah, so I'm an emergency physician. I turned into a money coach I would say I started my business about 2 years ago now. And my story really just kind of comes in from career burnout. That's how everything started. So I never knew that I was going to go into coaching. I just knew that I had a talent of pushing people to basically to their highest self. But I never had that skill set to put it into a framework or develop an IP or anything like that. And my story really comes out of a scarcity mindset, right? I had a lot of that growing up, is scarcity and just feeling really tight with money, right? We didn't have much growing up. My mom was single mom. She raised us on her own in the Bronx. And so, it was there was this added pressure to make sure that we were going to be successful at all costs. And so along with that, right, is you have to just keep on going and going and going, get to the top, get to the pinnacle of success. And of course, there's this false sense of security that was ingrained in us that well, if you have enough money or you make enough money, that is now going to, provide safety. But as you all know, that doesn't always provide safety. So you could still have millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars and still have a scarcity mindset. And that reflects in the way in which you spend money, the way you earn money, the way you invest your money or lack of. And so all of that mindset still impacts you, right? So that's why it's you'll see people like NFL players who They make like millions of dollars, and for whatever reason, they're like, I can't even pay my bills. And then you're like, wait,
Right.
what? How can you
Right.
not pay your bills as a millionaire? So it's more so about money mindset, like how you manage your money, your feelings, your thoughts, more so about that than the actual money itself. Because money is a tool. We're the ones that attach
Hmm.
our emotions to it. We're the ones that are like getting so, caught up with it and all of the things. It's just there minding its business.
I'm
But
just
we're
making sure
the
my edges are still here. I'm just making sure my edges are still here already because I feel like they
I
was getting
mean,
snatched just that quick.
oh
Okay.
yeah. Yeah,
Keep
it's
going,
doing
please.
it's minding its business, and we are there attaching all these rules and regulations and emotions to it, right? And then now you can have some pathological relationship with money. And so the goal for me as a money coach is to help you uncouple that, uncouple those thought processes, those unconscious things that you're saying about money or that has been ingrained in you from a childhood, depending on your generational situations, right? Depending on how your parents thought about money, help you uncouple those thoughts and those feelings. And then there's a lot of guilt and shames, like especially if you had some money mistakes or some money trauma, or if you've had a lot of debt, those things are impacting how you behave and how you act with money now in the current day. And so I try to help my clients unpack those things so that they can have a better relationship with money, be more free with it, let it flow like it should, have a return on investment, right? And so it's like
Hmm.
that is not the only thing that matters, right? It's mind, body, soul. What are other things that
I
make
love
you,
that.
So
Absolutely. I absolutely love that, Timmy. I want to double tap on a couple different things, but just quickly before I do that, who do you primarily work with? Do you just work with physicians, or who are some of your clients?
yeah, my
Where do they
clients
typically come from?
mostly women physicians, high or other high income professionals, but mostly women physicians, women of color.
Okay.
That is who I work with. Yeah.
Okay. And so you tapped on so many different things. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about how you grew up? And you said a lot of things about money trauma, money fears, which people are like, what? What is all of that? But you said that a lot of things that you noticed came from your background story. Could you share a little bit about how you grew up, even how you got into the medical field, chose
Yeah.
emergency medicine, and maybe how that all played into your whole money story per se?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so growing up, I grew up with my mom, the oldest of three kids, and we were all raised with her. And my mom basically, she worked as a nurse assistant for probably about 30 years in a nursing home. And so my mom was very good with money. So she saved a lot. And I think she actually saved to the point of like, I think she saved too much, So there's a point where you could actually save where it starts to almost kind of become pathological. And so I saw a lot of that growing up, or I would hear her say, like, turn the lights off because the bills are too high, or, we can't afford this, right? So there's certain things that were like just kind of passed down to us. And she always made an emphasis on education, right? My background is Nigerian. She came here about 40 plus years ago. And so her mentality was definitely hustle hard, work hard, and then, it's like just go straight for the highest degree that you can in the US because that is the only way to make it, right? So there was no like business acumen. There was no like learning about like how to manage money, right? We never talked about like budgeting. We never talked about like other ways to make money outside of just like your physical labor. So that's all I saw growing up. So I always equated myself, money generation means my sweat equity.
Hmm.
And
Got it.
so exactly. So, so the whole concept of now trying to make money outside of medicine, I was like, what does that even look like? Because medicine is secure, right? That's what they told us growing up is, oh yeah, once you become a doctor, you're gonna have all this money and then everything that you want in this life, you'll be able to accomplish that, right? But of course, when you start to work as a physician, especially for us as ER
That's
physicians,
wrong.
for us as ER physicians, it's literally sweat equity.
Exactly.
Like we are running up and down the ED all day, every day, getting all sorts of situations happening, and it can become very exhausting.
Right. People dying, legs trying to fall off, heart attacks, strokes. It's you never
Mm-hmm.
know what's gonna happen, and you're just there in the thick of
You
it for
just
12 hours. Just go. You said going, just getting up and seeing people and just going.
just keep going, right? And so my mom spent a lot of her time at work as well. So she did that. So that now makes sense to me now, growing like as an adult. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's why I always felt like I needed to be at work. And when I'm not at work, I'm like, what am I doing with myself? And so that thought
Hmm.
pattern basically was a thought pattern that led me down the rabbit hole with burnout and like nearly killed me. Okay, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, everything, all levels.
Can you tell me
Burnout
about that
was
time? Yeah,
over.
I was gonna say, can you tell us a little bit more about the time that you kind of hit
Yeah,
that wall of burnout?
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so basically, so my journey into like just becoming a doctor was because it was ingrained in me, right? My mom was a nurse assistant, so she was always in medicine. And then, from the time I was 12 years old, I kind of already knew that I was going to be a doctor. And then I started shadowing a physician in New York, and that physician was like dealing with a lot of HIV patients. So I saw that and I was like, oh, they were very emaciated at the time. It wasn't like how HIV is now where we have all the medications. And
Hmm.
so I saw full blown AIDS. And so I was like, okay, this is going to be my passion. Like, I'm going to help people. I love people. I'm going to help people. I don't like to see people suffer. And
Right.
so that was where all my educational pursuits went towards med school, residency. Everything was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead, help people. I even wanted to like do global health medicine. But
Hmm.
then I kind of stopped in my tracks because I was like, all right, I went to GW. GW was one of the most expensive schools in the nation. Graduated with about $450,000 of student loan debt. And coming from where I was coming from, I was like, okay, so who gonna pay for that? Because clearly, um, my mom's not gonna be able to pay for it. No one in my
Right.
family.
Ain't no silver spoons. Ain't no
No
trust
silver
funds.
fund.
Ain't no nothing.
Ain't no nothing. So it was like, girl, you on your own. So that was what now, when I got to that crossroads in my last year of residency, I was like, fellowship, that's another 2 years. The interest is going to add up. The interest at that time was about 8.5, 8.6%. And then the whole like student loan forgiveness, how people are getting their loans forgiven now, that whole process literally was just in its initial phase. And
Okay.
so all the financial gurus at the time, white coat investors and all of those, physician blogs, they were all suggesting it's better to just refinance your student loans into a very lower rate loan so that
Yeah.
you can have more of that, your payments go to the principal. And so I was like, okay, I'll just do that strategy. I'll just do that, pay off my loans. Like I'll live frugally because I'm the type of person like I save. I tend to save my money and hold on to it pretty tightly. And so I was like, well, I'll just do that and I'll just save and I'll keep working. So when I got out of the residency, I went straight into the community instead of going into academics. And that was the reason. That was my mindset at that time, was like, I was just going to be live frugally, work, 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 pay off these loans, and then boom, my life will be better, right? Oh, things will be so great and joyous. Woo!
That's what
Okay.
we thought.
And so I just kept working like that in the community for years. Um, of course, I now start adding like additional members in my family, right? I get married, I have children, and I didn't start to account for what that would look like in terms of now expenses. Because before I was just thinking about myself. I didn't
Right.
have to worry about any of that, right? Um, so what I found was that, okay, now that there's an expanding family, we do need to expand in our living space. So the only thing that I did in terms of like maybe a little bit of a lifestyle creep was we purchased our first home. The first home we
Okay.
purchased it, Didn't really have to put like too much down. I was able to get like a
Well, let me
5%.
ask you. Let me ask you. I know you grew up in New York and then you went to GW, of course, which was in DC. So where did you end up settling? Did you go into a place that had a high cost of living like a New York or a DC, or where did you end up buying your first home?
Yeah, so I ended up here in
Okay.
Houston. And so, for the most part in Houston, about like what, 6, 7 years ago, the interest
Okay.
rate wasn't too bad, getting your first home. And then, there's all these like physician loans and like all those
Yeah.
options. So at that time, I was able to negotiate with like 5 or 6 different lenders to get the best interest rate for me at the time. And so the
Nice.
interest rate that ended up getting was lower than the interest rate that I had on my student loans. And so for me at the time, I was like, okay, well, it makes sense for me to purchase a home because as we know with real estate and as we know with like the market overall, there's going to be appreciation. And so I was like, that appreciation would, I like if I keep on paying rent, I'm not going to be able to get that like equity that I've put paid down on, nor would I
Right.
get that appreciation or some of the tax benefits as well of owning a home. So that was my thought process at the time. So I was like, okay,
Got you.
at least let me invest and have that, and then also work on paying my student loans down at the same time, right?
Got you.
Well, all of this, Kim, all of this was still dependent on my sweat equity, right? So I
Mhm.
never accounted for career burnout. So what ended up happening was for a good 5 years, I just kept going to work. I was doing extra shifts. Every time they said they needed help, I would be the, oh, I'll help out and I'll be the, rescuer, the savior, right? And I just kept going and going and going. I was never in tune with how I was feeling or my emotions. But it got to a critical point where I started slowly, like probably about year 4, year 5, I was like, okay, I'm in a high acuity, high volume setting. And now they're chasing me down about RVUs, right? So this whole, production, based payment. And and that was like from the beginning of our career. But we were initially with a physician owned group, and then they sold the company over to private equity. So private equity now gets more emphasis on
I'm
this whole.
sorry. Let me pause you right there. That's okay. Let me pause. Private equity companies is the bane of my existence. It's part of the
Yeah,
reason why I am an active member of the American Academy of Emergency Medicine, because seeing what private equity has done to emergency medicine, more specifically as a field,
yeah,
and it's creeping into the house of medicine. Of course, we're ER doctor talking to ER doctors, so I'm preaching to the choir. But
yeah,
for anybody else that's listening, private equity has come into medicine in the form of corporate management groups. So your companies
yes,
such as Team Health, Envision, USAC,
yeah,
Schumacher, that are staffing hospitals, whether that's with the hospitalist, the ED doctor, sometimes the OB hospitalist, the surgeons, anesthesiologists as well too. It's starting to come take over the house of medicine, and it's been so that we are allowing suits who have absolutely no idea what it means to take care of patients at the bedside to direct medical and financial decisions that directly impacts not only us as
yeah.
physicians but also patient care as well too. So I can 100% understand why where you about to go with this conversation
Right,
about
you
how
know,
that typically works, because the first thing that they
right?
normally do is they cut staff, they
hmm
cut salaries, they cut back on the resources, including
Yeah,
nursing resources as well too, so that we
yeah,
are running a cheaper model, but
yeah,
patients are not getting taken care of anymore. It's
yeah.
actually worse patient outcomes because of this level of influence in the house of medicine. I'm sorry, go ahead. I just want to
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about it.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay,
You
I'm off my
articulated
soapbox.
that, like seriously, you articulated that like entirely well, and that was the thing. So that at that time, there was just that internal friction where I was like, I didn't go
Hmm.
into medicine for metrics. That's not what I went into medicine for. I went into medicine because I went in to help patients, right? I still actually like to talk to patients and take my time with them and really understand who they are, why they're there, and then, of course, yes, the presenting symptom. But when you're dealing with the metrics and then you get these threats of maybe your pay being potentially cut, right? Some of the private equity groups do
Right.
that. Or, you get the whole email about, well, you're last in line, or you're not the first highest producer. It just it just puts a wedge on your values as a physician. And so that also led to burnout. So I felt like I was dealing with that, right? I got to a point where it was hard for me to want to be able to still talk to patients, but then meet those metrics at the same time. And so then I found myself
Right.
focusing on the metrics. I found myself focusing on like, okay,
Yeah.
am I seeing an hour, 2.5? And then the number just kept creeping up every year. So it was a point where it was like, okay, it was okay to see 20 patients in 9 hours. And then now it was like, oh no, girl, you're not working fast enough. It needs to be 30. And I'm like, in 9 hours, high acuity, high volume, you're bound to make mistakes, right? But we as
Hmm.
physicians, we're altruistic, we're people pleasers. We don't want to rock the boat, right? We're so nice. So we just continue to
Right.
allow these things to happen. And so you're bottling this stuff up. And then now you get to a halt and it gets to a point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. And so for me, that's what
So what
burnout
was that
started.
moment? Take me back to that moment, Timmy, when you were just like the cork just popped and it's just like, nope,
Yeah.
I'm done. Like take me back
It
there.
literally, it literally, it was like a slow burn, and then the pop was I was on shift, and it was like all hell was breaking loose as it sometimes does, right? And I had all these like patients coming in. It was like ambulances lining up, and literally it was so loud. It was like the loudest. For whatever reason, I felt like I was in the twilight zone. Like it just felt so loud. I was standing in the ED, and yet another ambulance guy came in, and I was like, I can't do this shit anymore.
Hmm.
I literally was like, I can't do this anymore. I told my colleague, I was like, look, if I'm not careful, I literally will walk off the shift. I'm going to leave. I was having palpitations. It was super loud. It was like a piercing noise that was like, girl, something has to give. You have to change. You can't go like this anymore. That was my pivotal moment. I don't know. It just happened like instantly overnight where I was like, I can't. I'm sorry,
Wow.
something has to give, something has to change. And so that was when I had made that decision. I was like, I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm going to email my medical director and let them know that 3 months from now, I'm cutting down to part time slash PRN or whatever that's going to look like. But I'm out of here.
Did
And
you have a plan? Did
I
you
had
have a
no,
plan about
I had
any of
no,
this?
I did not have a proper plan. All I had was I'm doing this and it's going to happen by July of that year. And it was in April of that year. And I was like, okay, well, it takes about 90 days to credential at other places. So
Okay.
that's what I'm going to do. So I was like, it wasn't like I had credentialed already. I was like, I just know that I need to stop. And then if I don't tell them, I'm not going to stop. So I had to do the action first.
Hmm. Huh.
And then now took the steps backwards. Like, okay, so what is that going to look like for me now if I'm not working here full time? And what's that going to look like for my coins? So once I made that decision, because those coins are important. Like, look, we could quit all we want, but
Absolutely.
you think about you got just basic bills to keep the light on, right? You have to have that in place. And so I was like, okay, I know I still need to be able to like have my minimum that I'm going to be able to cover the basis of my home and whatever. But I had to talk to my CPA, my financial team, and ask them, look, what would that look like if I cut back to PRN? Like, I'm honestly, as a physician, we make well over what like 1% of the population makes. It
Right.
would not hurt if we needed to take a small break. Like, my account is not going to go completely to zero. And then if it does, hey, look, we'd be able to like make it back, right? And so I had to have that conversation with them. Like, what does it look like? Where do I need to cut back on? What are other ways in which I can like make more money, but just in a different way? I didn't want to
Yeah.
continue in the way that I was going because where I was
Yeah.
going was literally to hell.
Yeah. I have got to pause you because one, I had the same moment. Not that I'm going to tell my part of the story. Of course, I've told that story a
Mhm.
few times on my podcast. But I love that you let your burnout, and this is exactly what I talk about with some of my marketing, is that you took the sign of burnout and the sign of you being pissed off as not a sign to it was a sign that there was a problem, not with you,
Yeah.
but with the situation, with the
Yeah.
environment, and you let that be a not a like I said a stop sign for you, but like a basically a red flag saying, "Hey, you need to do something different." And you didn't just ignore that. You just didn't sit in your
Hmm.
feelings and just allow yourself to be inundated by all the bullshit
Yeah.
from corporate medicine and all of that. It's like, no, I am an individual person and in myself. This has got to change for me. This is not what I signed up for. This
Yeah.
is not the path that I wanted to take. And you did something different. I
Yeah.
love that. I just wanted to reiterate that if you are burnt out, Doc, if you're listening to this and you can hear some of the your story and Dr. Timmy's story, that means that you're burned out. And that does not necessarily mean that you need to quit being a doctor, because
Hmm.
Dr. Timmy and I, we still both practice medicine. But that
Yeah.
is a sign that you need to do something different for yourself, for your family, for your situation, in order for you to thrive. We did not get
Yes.
into medicine to sacrifice ourselves. That's not the goal, of course. And it's really, like I said, to important to make sure that if you're feeling that same frustration, that same anger, that same numbness, honestly, because I know at some point I just felt numb. It's just like whatever
I've felt
happens is
numb.
gonna happen.
Hmm.
Then that
Hmm.
is a sign that you need to do something wrong, or do something different. Excuse me. And the other thing I wanted to double tap on is you said you had a money team. Who's
Oh
on your money
yeah.
team?
Oh yeah. I have
What's a money team? What's
a
I
money
know I
team.
got a money team, but what's a money team for you?
Look. So I always recommend you have to have your CPA, right? Right, because they're
Hmm.
going to tell you what you need to put away, especially if you're a 1099 employee. They're going to tell you what you need to put away every month as far as your taxes and as far as like what to pay yourself as a salary. Then I had my financial advisor. I've had my financial advisor since I was in residency, like that my last year of residency. And so it's always good to like double tap on someone else who has like more information about like different ways and where you could put your money and like different strategies that you could use to like grow your money, because it's one thing to make the amount of income that we do and it's one thing to keep it. And so that's what ends up happening is that we make so much income, but then we don't necessarily keep it, or we don't have this advanced strategies to like build wealth, you know. So then you find that, you know, yes, I've been working for 10 years in medicine, but for whatever reason, I don't have enough savings, right? That is where some of my clients
Right.
are at. And so that's the money team. And of course, like a tax strategist, somebody that does your bookkeeping,
Hmm.
those type of people are part of
Hmm.
the money team. Those are the people that I recommend.
I love that. And I love that you had that so early. Especially, I do recommend that residents and young attendings have someone that they trust, i.e., a financial advisor, i.e., a CPA, i.e., a bookkeeper, to help them keep organized. And
Yeah.
like you said, even a tax strategist, I don't have one, but a tax strategist to
Hmm.
make sure that you are reducing the amount of tax burden that you have in that, like you're starting off on the right foot, especially if you are a resident or a young attending. You don't want to go off on this journey, like you said, especially if you're 1099, which I've almost always been since I've been and attending. Um, you don't want to just be stuck with a huge tax bill. You want to actually enjoy the level of money that you're making and be able to pass some of it down to your
Yes.
children, or if not even the children, if that's not something you decide to do, charitable other organizations or other places that you
Hmm.
feels good for you, so that you can continue to contribute to this world in other ways as well too. I love that you said that that's who's on your money team. um what was I going to ask you, Timmy? Next, I was going to ask you about okay, so you quit. So basically you gave him a 90-day notice and you didn't have any plan. How did you get from your quitting to all of the things that you're doing now after that? Because we haven't even gotten to all of the dope stuff. We just talked about the fact that you're a money coach, like, but you
Yeah.
started. breaking past some of your own money fears, starting doing some
Yeah.
things on your own. So tell us about that.
Yeah, yeah. So I know. It's, like you said, that burnout sign for me was, it was like red flag, something needs to change. It didn't necessarily for me say like, okay, I need to leave medicine 100%, but I was like, I need to find a better way of using my talents and my gifts, and also just like, being better, just a better human overall. Like, so I just really started working on like, self reflection, healing, like any traumas, right? I had some childhood trauma, and being so inundated with medicine, you don't necessarily have the time to process some of those things because you're always like giving and over giving to other people. And so, even with that too, that's also a coping mechanism because then it allows you to hide from
Yes.
the traumas that you're supposed to deal with for yourself, because you're like, okay, I'm helping other people, So
I'm
that's
good.
another.
Yeah. I'm not worried about me. It's all about you. I'm good. I'm good over here.
Exactly. So it's a good way to hide, right? It's a good way to hide. And so burnout really allowed me to just kind of turn inward and see like, what are my fears? What is my mindset like about money? What has traumatized me about money? Um, and then my scarcity mindset, where does that come from? Why did I feel the need to like work so hard to have this money and like save it and like act like it could never return back? Um, so I then said, okay, I need to hire someone that could help me because I was like,
Hmm.
I can't do this on my own. And so I hired a coach.
Hmm.
And, my goal with that coach really was just, let's just process like what's going on with me, And then with that coach, it ended up turning into like, well, you're going to use your story and build your IP. And that story is what you're going to use to attract who you're going to help and who you're going to be in service to. So I never set out to be a money coach. I never set out to have a business. I had never, it was not a thing. But then when I reflected back to my story, and every time I saw myself like telling my story to people, they just felt like, wow, this is so powerful. And the way that you've been able to overcome some of these challenges that you face or are still facing, right? And it's always ever evolving. It's never like, oh, you get to this pinnacle of like, oh, I'm completely healed, but at least you know that you're better than where you came from, right? It's the whole gap in the
Yeah.
game, gap in the gain concept from that book.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, and
If you, I'm
so
sorry, let me pause because you brought up a great book. If anyone
mhm,
has not read From the Gap in the Gain, I think that I'm pretty sure it's a business mindset book, but I think it's so applicable in so many different ways in your life. I don't want to give too much of it away because it's worth a listen and it's worth a read. But it's called The Gap in the Gain. I'll link it in the show notes for anybody that sounds interested in it. That's interested in it. But it's really showing you where your goals are and how you're perceiving where you are in relation to those goals and how that thought process can be holding you back or
yeah,
how it can propel you forward. So the gap in the gain, I love that book. I also recommend
yeah,
my clients to read it as well too, because that has been interesting to see if I'm in plus energy or if I'm in minus energy. Like where am I really looking at as far as like, okay, no, I'm not at seven figures in my business yet, but
yeah,
I'm not at zero and I'm at six. And so that's
mhm,
more than I was when I started. So being able to adjust your goals and really look at things differently has helped me as well too. So I love that you brought that book up.
yeah, yeah. No, that book is like amazing. I was like, oh wow, okay, so this is where like I've lived most of my life, and so now understanding that whole concept, like that goalpost is ever changing. So to
Yeah.
feel like, oh, I'm not accomplishing enough or I'm not doing enough, like when is enough ever enough, and so that just learning how to deal with that was like huge.
Hmm.
And so so with this coach then, so it was working on, okay, story, IP. And so out of that story basically came Money Mindset Academy, right? And so that's where I help women who have any sort of money trauma, who want to have a better relationship with their money, like who
Hmm.
also want to be able to like kind of direct where their funds go, see how they can have a return on their investment, make money outside of clinical medicine, just kind of using like mindset tools to help them just have a better relationship with the money. Because once you have a better relationship with money, the sky's the limit, right? You'll have
I
that
love
courage.
that.
Yeah, like you'll have that courage to pursue the coaching business, to pursue the consulting, to pursue the midterm rentals, right? Because you'll feel like, okay, I can, no matter what happens with money, I'm always going to be able to replenish it. Like if you have that mindset, I'm always going to be able to replenish it, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be from clinical income. It could be from real estate. It could be from my coaching business. It could be from consulting. It could be from any other thing, you know? And so just really honing in on what are the things that make you tick about money and then
Mhm.
just kind of unraveling that, really. So yeah.
Question about that though. How would a woman know if she has money trauma? How does that typically show up?
Yeah. So typically it shows up. So let's say, for example, I've had consultations with people who, during the market crash in 2008, they there was a woman who had to sell her home on a short sale. And
Mhm.
so now what happens is this happened in 2008. She has money, but then sometimes is afraid to use it because she feels like, well, I don't know if I'm going to go to zero like I did back in
Mhm.
2008. And so then you
Gotcha.
have that fear that's there. The root of it typically is fear. And
Okay.
so there's some sort of incident, there's some sort of life event, right? Maybe a divorce too for some women where they've
Yeah.
had to part with funds to an ex. And then now it's like, well, I worked so hard to build up this nest egg and now I had to split it. And so it's like, are they forgiving themselves for whatever scenario that caused them to get into that situation in the first place? Or if they had a spouse who was also not the greatest with money management and then ended up, using funds inappropriately.
Mhm.
So now forgiving themselves for one, maybe having a lack of boundary with that particular
Mhm.
spouse or boyfriend or whoever, maybe even with a parent too. Some people have that situation
Yeah.
where they're like, my parent didn't even save up. Like, so they say that, like, oh, my parent didn't even save up for their retirement. And then now they think because I'm a physician, I now have to take over all of their expenses because I
Right.
have made it in the family. And so, and if their parent tends to be somebody that kind of spends more than they're comfortable with, right? Because it's all about risk
Mhm.
aversion. Everyone's risk
Mhm.
aversion is different, because I
Mhm.
think we have a way of demonizing spending, especially if people like to spend. There's it's fine. There's people that spend money, there's people that save money, right? Either end of the spectrum could be pathological. And so
Yeah.
the issue is it depends on the spectrum and what your own risk aversion is and where you lie on that spectrum. So if you lie on the side where you're like, I like to really save my money, and then you have a partner who spends more, there's going to be friction, right? And
Yes.
then that might
Yes.
be traumatize you because you're like, oh, I didn't expect for you to buy that like $50,000 car without a discussion, right? There's stuff like that
Right.
happens, and so
Right.
there's different ways in which it shows up, and usually so people that find themselves in that scenario, they usually tend to try to hold on to their money really tightly. They have a lot of fear. They may not want to
Mhm.
spend on themselves. They may not go on vacation. They're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm just going to keep on saving and working and saving and working until we get to a certain point. But then they guess what? They never get to that point.
Right. Or they get to that point and then the goalpost moves again. Oh, I need more. I mean, I need
Oh, I
more.
need
I need
more.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the
Yeah.
way sometimes I would fill up.
I love that. I was just as you were talking, it made me think about my own money trauma, even
Hmm.
as an entrepreneur and in entrepreneurship, just in general, it's these things are going to come up. These
Yeah.
thoughts, these limiting beliefs around money, how much you're worth, making money is going to happen. But my money trauma came up when I was thinking about it when I invested in a real estate deal with a business
Mhm,
partner that went, and that deal went bad. That was
mhm,
right before I decided to pivot my strategy to start my midterm rental company. And I think
mhm,
part of me healing that money trauma was I had just sunk a whole lot of money into that deal and wasn't paying attention to what was going on, and
mhm,
trusted this other person who I should have found out earlier, but that because I had fears about what I was
mhm.
doing and felt like I should know because I'm the doctor and I have all this money, I should know how to manage it and keep it. These stories that were
Yeah,
in my head
yeah,
that allowed me to not do my due diligence, and then
yeah.
also, like I said, lose a lot of money. So that had me hesitant in
Mhm,
even investing in real estate again. That held me
yeah,
thinking, hesitant to even purchase a property.
yeah.
I took pause. I took a long pause. It's really still I'm
Mhm.
on a pause of investing in real
Yeah.
estate because of that. So it sounds like what money trauma comes from is a life circumstance, like you're saying, that happens where
Mhm.
you are extraordinarily hurt or disappointed around
Yes.
what happened to your money, and now
Yeah.
and those wounds are still there, those negative feelings are still there from that. Is that
Yes,
right, would you
that's
say?
exactly what it is. That's
Okay.
exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that fear and that negativity there holds you back from taking some of the action steps, right? It might show up as procrastination. It might show up as financial avoidance, right? And so financial avoidance is when you don't look at your bank statements. You don't look at your credit card statements. You don't look at your profit and loss statement. You are avoiding your CPA like the plague. You are avoiding your bookkeeper. Okay. And then when the final moment of when that tax is due, you now finally send in the documents, right? So those are signs of money trauma. So that's financial avoidance.
Y'all, I'm covering my face because I have been there. Okay, like, so don't feel alone.
Don't
I've
feel
been there.
bad.
This is
Yeah,
not about judgment.
it's not about judgment.
and
It's
I'm
just having the
and I'm
awareness.
still a successful entrepreneur.
And it's just
Right.
having
It's
the
about
awareness that
awareness.
that's what it shows up as. Yeah.
I love that. So tell us more about Money Mindset Academy. How, like, tell us about your clients, what kind of things that they're doing, like, what's
Oh
happening over
yeah.
there?
So basically, with that financial avoidance, right? Because I have different people that come in different stages. Some people are like money hoarders, some people avoid their finances. And so my clients, the ones that I'm working with right now, they tend to avoid their finances. And so what I have developed is called the money trauma algorithm. And basically it's just a way of us to just gain awareness as to what has happened, right, with your money and all this stuff in your mindset and everything like that. Then we kind of go through and like break down some of those limiting beliefs, and then we now try to build new money stories, money things that we're telling
Mm,
ourselves, and how you're good with money. This is what you're going to be able to accomplish. Money is fluid. You are going to work on a return on investment. So it's a tool that I've developed for them. So that helps them with the mindset piece, right? And then now we go deep dive in to the numbers. Because when we don't look at the numbers, then of course it's like, oh my God, I made this money, and then it seems like it's gone. But if we just
right.
look at those numbers, what's coming in, it's a math game. What's coming in, what's going out, what a little extra that you might have to put aside just to like feel free, or like, do have a spending plan. Like, I want to spend for vacation. I want to spend for that Gucci purse. I want to spend. So there's nothing here that's restrictive. Okay.
I
It's
love
just
that.
making a plan for the money. Okay. And then so my clients, when they come to me, typically what happens is maybe they have a little bit of credit card debt or a lot of credit card debt. It just depends. And then we work on how do we invest money, right? So start putting some money away in the stock market, Vanguard, and all of those, Fidelity, one of those, like have a taxable brokerage account. Just start putting some money away in an index fund. Then we also save, right? So we set a goal. How much is it that you want to save, right? And it could be just 3 months of money, or it could be 6 months. I think what happens is that all the traditional finance gurus have talked about you need to have a 6 month emergency plan. And sometimes that just seems like a very hard load to bear
Right.
initially, especially when you're working on just kind of managing your money better. So I always say, let's just start with like 3 months. How much do you want to save? And it doesn't have to be this lofty goal. It could just literally be a number, like a smaller number. And then as your cash flow increases, then we can start putting more money away. Um, and so they're paying down debt, they're investing, and they're saving at the same time. It doesn't have to be one.
What?
They're doing all
They
three,
doing all that at the same time,
all at the same time.
and they not
All,
overwhelmed.
and they're not overwhelmed. One of
What
my
are some
clients
of the
literally,
results? Yeah, no, I
yeah,
was about to say I want to hear. I want to hear exactly what some of your results. Because I thought you told me. Oh, I'll let you say it. I'm not gonna.
yeah,
Because we.
yeah. So one of my clients, she literally, when she started with me, she was like, "Oh, I'm not good with money, blah 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 blah." So I was like, "Girl, let's hone all of that in." She started paying down some credit card debt. Her credit score increased 100 points. Okay, 100 points in a matter of probably like, I don't know, like 45 days of working together. Not only that, I also help you negotiate, right? So when she started with me, what she was making and what she's making now are like literally she's doubled what she makes per hour. Because I was like, okay, no, we need to switch this, and this is what you're gonna ask for, and this is how much you're going to ask for it, and then we'll go, So basically, she's doubled her per hourly rate. Okay, and then she's on track to have her credit card debt completely paid off by the end of this year, and have $20,000 in savings. She just followed the framework.
I'm clearly I'm
Mm-hmm.
speechless. Like the credit score alone, I think is just blowing my mind. 100 points in 45 days.
Like literally. I mean, when she told me that, I was like, no. Even I was like stunned with her results.
Not no, no, girl, that ain't happen. Relax.
Yeah. And it was just because she was open to that accountability. Anyone can do this.
Mm.
It's just she was just open to that accountability and like really working on her mindset. And she stopped telling herself that story that she was bad with money. And then,
Oh,
and it was
this
because,
is so good.
and it was just because someone said, because you spend too much, now you're bad with money. Not necessarily. Spenders, I think what happens with spenders is that they feel like they were so deprived for so long, right? Especially if you come from like you don't come from having much, and then now you are in a position where you're like, finally, I got this bread, I got this money, I got these coins. So you tend to like overcompensate. That's what happens. So you try to play catch up almost like, okay, well, I need to go ahead and get the car. Let me get this bag. All these things that I've wanted that I never had growing up, right? So that's what happens. Not because they're inherently bad with money. It's just that now it's like, no, let's just plan for the spending. That's all. I'm
Yeah.
not saying don't spend.
Yes.
I'm not saying I like nice things too. Trust me, I do. But let's plan for it. So
I love that.
yeah,
Dr. Timmy, it's so amazing to hear that you are helping other women physicians and high achievers change their lives in such dramatic ways. I can't even imagine how many doors are now opened for her now that she
yeah,
has over 100, points of score of an increase of her
yeah.
credit score. I guess my question now is back to you as an entrepreneur. So since you've opened the doors of Money Mindset Academy a couple of years ago, and like you said, you did not set out to ever be a mindset coach or a coach at all. This was
No,
not the goal of what you were going to do.
yeah.
What are some of the things that you've been able to achieve as being an entrepreneur now yourself, being a coach yourself? How does that look like financially for you, and how has your life shifted and changed? I want you to
Oh.
drop tea about that amazing flip you did, but whatever. You can say that later.
Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of, we didn't get quite into that part of my story too, but I had always been interested in real estate from the time I was like,
Hmm.
I think my last year of residency. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm about to do when I get out, da 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 da. But I had this whole, like, my debt mindset was something I needed to work on for myself. And so I had always been like the part of like no debt, Dave Ramsey, like we gonna get rid of all this debt, right? And so that's what ended up happening, where I just worked myself to death because I was like, I got to get rid of this debt at all costs. And I was able to do that. I was able to get rid of at least $200,000 worth of student loans in
Mm-hmm.
about 4 years. And this is
Mm-hmm.
with still, you know, being the primary breadwinner and like just having to take care of a lot of expenses at the household. And so um, part of my mindset was, okay, I'll get into real estate so that I can like get that capital appreciation, cash flow, return on investment. But at the same time, I was like, well, do I want to continue to carry debt? So it was that like back and forth. And it kind of kept me in analysis paralysis for at least almost like 3 to 5 years. So I would go walk properties with a real estate agent, but what I see now is that those agents were not investor agents. No knock on like these residential agents, but I needed an investor agent at the time. So they would
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
show me these homes, and then I didn't know how to calculate the numbers. I was like, well, if I go ahead and jump and buy this house, and then the tenants aren't paying, right, or I have to supplement on that loan, then aren't I going to put myself in a bind, right? So that was where that kind of put me a little bit of like, there was a lot of fear there. So I didn't really
Yeah.
jump into real estate like I should have, like I wanted to. But then, like I said, with this whole like career burnout and everything just kind of went into flames, I was just like, okay, well, I think it's time for me to do this now. And so then that's
Mm-hmm.
when I ended up joining a mastermind where I was now around other real estate investors, and their mindset about money and debt and all that stuff. They were like, oh, please, let me get the cheapest debt and I'll buy this house. And if I could get that debt for 2% and then it gives me a 10% return, hello, so once I
Right.
started hearing more stuff like that, I was like, these folks are onto something. And so then for me, when I jumped in to that mastermind, within 90 days, I purchased my first Airbnb, and I did a flip there. So I actually did a renovation on a home. It was like 2 bedroom, 1 bath. Did some like minor renovations, but I did that, put it on Airbnb, and I actually got it creatively too. I did it creatively, and I got it through basically not working through traditional banking. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to bring my whole life savings and tax documents and all of the things that take so long to close. I literally closed within 2 weeks of saying that I was going to purchase that property, and I still
Wow.
have it to
Wow.
today. Yeah, and
And
then
it's cash flowing and guests are
yeah, it's cash
happy.
flowing. Guests are happy. People are coming through, and I was able to do cost segregation study on it, where I'm now using that like study to basically get the tax benefits and reduce my taxable income, because that's what it's all about. It's about how much can you still keep at the end of the day, even though you have a high income, you know
Right.
because we're taxed at the highest, one of the highest brackets as middle class.
Right.
And then,
Right.
so with that being said, I was like, okay, well, I want to get into another property. So that's when I ended up getting into this full gut rehab. Woo!
Mm-hmm.
That was a project, okay? Very, very huge project. And so right now, the project is finished, completely renovated from head to toe, new roof, new flooring, new electrical, new plumbing, like all of this from scratch. And the place is beautiful right now, just waiting for somebody to buy it.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Dr. Timmy, the reason why I wanted to talk to you because I can very clearly see how the power of coaching has changed your life, and I clearly see how your coaching business as
Yeah.
a coach now has changed other people's lives. And that's one of the things that I think I love the most about this industry and being a coach, no matter if you are a money coach, like if you're talking about business, money, wealth, or if you're talking about health, wellness, all of that.
Yeah.
coaching is so amazing because you can start to see the change and the progress in yourself, and then encouraging other people to achieve that for themselves and providing them a clear, simple process, a
Yeah.
frameworks for them to do that, to make it easy for other people to achieve their goals.
Yeah.
And I know that that's what, you're getting out of it. Of course, we're also one of business besties. We talk about business and stuff all the time. We always are. She's always coaching me about my money. I'm always coaching her. Girl, you need to do this launch. You need to do this, and that. We're always going back and forth. We're coaching each other. But I just wanted to double tap on that. Like, you continuously sought help outside of yourself. And that's
Oh, yeah.
really what coaching is, and the power of that is when you decide to say, okay, I know I can do this, but I just need some help along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, because, it's like what we always talk about. There's one thing to have your own evidence bank, right? And then there's one thing to have the collective evidence bank. And then just having somebody to hold you accountable and someone to remind you
Right.
when, your little cave woman, your little gremlin is talking and saying, like, you're not doing a good enough job and blah, blah, blah. The negative thoughts, because
Right.
they're naturally just always going to be there, right? There's like, I feel like we have
Right.
way more negative thoughts every day than the positive thoughts. And so having someone
Right.
like, just speak life into you and really show you how amazing you are. Sometimes you forget. And so having that
Hmm.
accountability with a coach,
Yeah.
or someone that shortens your process too, right? They've been there, they've gone through all the
Yes.
hoops and obstacles and have to jump through. And so they make it easier for you with their framework to accomplish the same thing that you want to accomplish. It's just now somebody is shortening that path for you. So why would I
Absolutely. And
do it by
also,
myself?
I would, oh,
No, I was just saying, why would I try to do
I'm
it
sorry.
by myself? I was saying, why would I try to do it by
Oh,
myself
right.
when I have somebody that could, you know what I mean? That showed me the way. Like coaching, I will
And I
always
was
have
just about to say, I was just about to say too, and coaching too, so many people have different communities. And so when you are in a coaching container, when you decide to hire a coach, a lot of times you are not the coach's only client. And
yeah,
still to be in community with other people that are working on the same things that you are, like you said, you joined the mastermind. You and I met each other from being having the same coach as well too. So we met in a coaching
yeah,
container. You're able to build relationships with people that you can do business with later, that you can
yeah,
call and ask for support. Like, what do you do? What should I do? They can help to see your own limiting beliefs. And so you'll have other people around you that are doing it. I think also what's lonely for doctors as well is that, so many of us do not have quote business training. We didn't get
yeah.
an MBA. And even if we did, that doesn't necessarily mean you know how to start a business or manage your
Hmm.
money or do anything like that. So being around other people where it's safe to talk about these things. It's safe to share your visions, your goals, and the fact that you're actively working towards them together, I think is one of the most powerful things that coaching can give to someone. Is just not just the process and the one-on-one support, but also sometimes just who you meet along the way that you never would have met
Absolutely.
before unless you
Exactly.
had, decided to bet on yourself in that way.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know we have to go, but really quickly before you go, tell us if someone is interested in joining Money Mindset Academy, where can we find you? Give us all the details of all of
Oh
that.
yeah. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Money Mindset MD, LinkedIn, Temi Ajao, Facebook, Temi Ajao, and my podcast, of course, the Money Mindset MD podcast has everything on there. You can find me there, or you can email me at drtemi@moneymindset.info.
I love that. Okay, and I will put all of that in the show notes just in case anybody did not get that. Dr. Temi Ajao, like I said, this was long overdue. Thank you
Long
so much for being
overdue.
on the Dr. Money Podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was
I
awesome.
appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate everything that you do, and thank you for gracing our audience. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Docs Get Money podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday wherever you find your favorite podcast. Share, comment, follow, and subscribe to the Docs Get Money podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more, visit me, Dr. Kimberly Brown, at KimberlyBrownMD.com, and be sure to follow me at Dr. Kimberly B on Instagram. And until next time, let's go get this money, honey.